On April 10th of this year, a tragedy happened just over the Hudson. A Bell 206L4 helicopter with 6 people on board crashed into the Hudson River. We did a video on that shortly after that accident. The NTSB report is now out, and the NTSB report is notorious for what it doesn't say as much as what it does say. It's not a very long report, so I'm going to talk about what's in this report, and then I'm going to talk about what I think is not in it and what I think the cause of the crash is. Let's jump into the NTSB report to get started. On April 10th, 2025, at 3:15 Eastern Daylight Time, a Bell 206L4 helicopter with the tail number November 216 Mike Hotel was destroyed when it was involved in an accident near Jersey City, New Jersey. The pilot and 5 passengers were fatally injured. The helicopter was operated as a Title 14 Code Federal Aviation Part 91 tour helicopter. On page 2, it talks about the last minute of the flight. It gives us a detail about the whole flight route. It took off just south of the Holland Tunnel, went down by the Statue of Liberty, did a 360 around the Statue of Liberty, went back up the Hudson River to the George Washington Bridge. And I've actually flown this route before in a VFR and a T-34 Bravo. It's a beautiful route. You've got Manhattan on one side. You've got New Jersey on the other side. It's gorgeous. They went up to the George Washington Bridge, came back at about 700 feet for most of the journey. The helicopter crashes right on top of the Holland Tunnel. At one point, they descended down to about 625 feet. They climbed back up to 675 feet, according to this report, and that's important, and I'm going to tell you why here in just a minute. But the final minute of the flight, it says, with the reported time, altitude, and ground speed is superimposed on the picture that they provided in the report. As the helicopter approached the Holland Tunnel, the ventilation towers at the tunnel outside Jersey City, New Jersey, it was at the 625 feet. The helicopter increased to 675 before it entered a rapid descent. The data ended at 3:14, almost 3:15 in the afternoon, and the helicopter's last observed altitude was 125 feet. So we've all seen those pictures where the aircraft was coming apart. It was in 3 distinct pieces. Several witnesses described hearing several loud bangs emanating from the helicopter. That's important information. Surveillance video with accompanying audio captured the helicopter traveling south before it suddenly separated into 3 major sections. Those 3 sections were the fuselage, including the engine, the main rotor system, including both main rotor blades. They stayed intact, and the transmission and the roof beam structure, those were all included in the second one, and then a tail beam, including the tail rotor. Those 3 things came apart. There are some really grainy photos here that we can show you, but the helicopter was not equipped with any sort of video or audio recording devices. Photos of the pilot taken just before the helicopter took off shows that he was wearing these sunglasses. They were able to record data. They did not recover those from the accident scene. Now, I want you to take a look at these 3 grainy photos, because the first one is the aircraft is completely intact. Now, the NTSB description of that first really grainy photo says this. It was the beginning of the failure, it says, and the fuselage yaws severely with simultaneous boom failure. So the tail of the aircraft came off. Now, was it because the tail came off that the aircraft yawed severely, or did it yaw severely and the tail came off? Now, if it yawed severely, it may cause that tail to snap. That would do it. There's nothing really from the report here to indicate why the fuselage, the main part of the aircraft, would yaw that violently, or even how it could have yawed that violently. I don't think the pilot could induce that from his controls, but maybe he could. The winds were not a factor that day. The weather was not really a factor. He wasn't doing anything extraordinary. It says he was down at around 625 feet. Now, there's some conjecture about that last 25 feet, going from 650 to 675 when everything falls apart. And I've heard some guys talking about an airworthiness directive that was out, talking about the rotor blades on that particular helicopter, or one like it. And there had been some incidents in the past where it caused a fluctuation or a bump in the aircraft unexpectedly, and the pilots would have to take almost immediate action to put pressure or put some sort of load on those rotors rotors to get them to stop that bumping effect. There's no evidence that we know that they had those particular blades on this aircraft. So I'm not going to take that leap right at this moment. I don't know what type of blades they had. Maybe in the final report or later on we'll find out. That may explain a lot. I'm just assuming that if he was at 700 feet for most of the journey and he was down at 625, maybe he was just climbing back up to 700 feet when the helicopter came apart. So hold on to that because I'll give you my theory here in a minute. The second grainy photo now shows two distinct parts. Are both circled. The fuselage now is containing the engine and the main rotor. They're all still attached, but the tail boom has separated from the aircraft. Well, that's going to cause a catastrophic failure. This helicopter no longer is flying. It's now coming apart. The third photo, the third grainy one, shows you all three parts. The main rotor blades on top of the helicopter with attached transmission and the roof structure are fully separated now from the fuselage. And we can see in the video where they all three splash down in the Hudson. Let me continue with the report. The helicopter was not equipped with any video. I talked about that. They didn't recover his sunglasses. The pilot now, let's talk about him for a minute. He had logged 790 total flight hours. Not inexperienced, not that many hours, but he's okay. He had 48.6 hours in the same make and model, so he's kind of new to this helicopter, although I don't think he was the main factor here. The pilot worked 10 days on and 10 days off. He was just coming off of 10 days off. This was his first day back on duty. This was the 8th flight of the day for this particular helicopter and this pilot. So he's been up 7 times before. In this helicopter, this is flight number 8. Now, for those of you who subscribe to conspiracy theories and all that, I've heard them all. There was a family on board. It was a corporate CEO. A lot of people think that this was sabotage. Well, if it was sabotage, they would have had to sabotage this airplane between the 7th and the 8th flight of the day. There's no evidence to support that. And there's no evidence to support a bomb or anything like that. This airplane didn't explode. It simply came apart in 3 pieces. And so we have to figure out what caused the airframe to fail the way it failed. All right, so hang in there. I'm going to give you my thoughts. We'll be right back. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. I spend a lot of time in the air, but when I'm not flying, I'm at home with my 4-legged co-pilot, Dixie. Now, Dixie doesn't mess around. She plays hard, naps harder, and expects her meals to be on par with mine. And frankly, she's earned it. That's why we feed her Sundays for dogs. Sundays is fresh dog food made from human-grade ingredients. We're talking 100% meat muscle, nutrient-rich organs, superfoods, and absolutely zero synthetics or artificial preservatives. It's vet-formulated, I love that part, made right here in the USA and designed to keep dogs like Dixie at peak performance. Whether she's chasing squirrels or just the UPS truck, Dixie's obsessed. She hears that Sunday's bag crinkle and suddenly she's doing backflips like it's an air show. We only feed her the best, and Sundays is the gold standard. Give your dog the chance to try Sundays and watch them fall in love. Get 50% off your first order of Sundays using the link in the description, or use my code Captain Steeeve at checkout. So if you love your dog like we love Dixie, skip the mystery kibble and try Sundays. It's real food for real good dogs. And thanks to Sundays for sponsoring today's video. Sponsors like this make it possible for us to create content for you. On initial review of the helicopter's maintenance records, it revealed that the most recent inspection was, and again, this is a progressive inspection on this aircraft. I like inspections that are done all at once, but they're allowed to be done over time. So this was a progressive inspection on this. It was at the 300-hour mark. They describe it here as event number 2 in this progressive inspection regime. It was conducted on February 27th. So that's 6 weeks before the accidents. At that time, the helicopter airframe accrued 12,975 total hours. Okay, this is no spring chicken. This helicopter's been around the block a few times, and the engine had accrued a total of 23,305 hours of operation. That's fairly high time, although these turbine engines can go quite much longer than piston-driven engines, so that's not out of the question. At the time of the accident, The helicopter had been operated about 50 hours since the inspection. So not a lot in the last month, but a fair amount of time. It was in day visual meteorological conditions. So that's the whole report. Now, let's take a look at a photo, because I want to take our little, and here at the Captain Steeeve Network, we spare no expense on our visual aids. And this is a helicopter similar to the Bell 206. It's a two-bladed rotor on the top. Now, here's the things that we want to look at before we look at the photo. The Bell 206, the rotor rotates counterclockwise to the left, primarily, which is going to force the nose of the aircraft to the left. Now, the tail rotor now is going to have to push in this direction to counteract that force to the left to keep it coming back to the right. And that's how a helicopter flies straight. So the more speed and the more basically kind of stress you put on the main rotor that's forcing the nose to the left, the more this tail rotor speeds up and forces it back this way. So it goes nice and straight. But it also causes a lot of pressure right here on this tail boom. And most helicopters that fail, the tail boom fails, it'll fail right at the attachment point to the main helicopter. This one does not fail at the attachment point. It fails one row of rivets down. Curious to me why it did that, but I'm going to show you a photo here that's very descriptive. Now, as you can see here, this man, the NTSB investigator, he's got the black glove on the top of the fuselage. What we're looking at is the fuselage actually is upside down. So we're looking at the left side of the aircraft, and underneath part, where kind of where his flashlight is the right side of the aircraft, this side. So we're looking at, if I can for the camera, we're looking at this side right here. That's where those 8 or 9 rivets are on the left side of the helicopter. The right side is all the jagged metal. So my conjecture here is that this is where it failed. It failed right along that row of rivets, and they all pop cleanly off. And then this tail pushing in this direction, right, would cause this tail boom to fold in this way, and then the hinge now would be on the other side where he is. And I'll show you another photo that's the right orientation here in a minute, and it would cause all of that ripping and tearing and tearing off of the airframe as it departed the aircraft. So I believe right there along that line where all those rivets are, right here on the helicopter, is where it actually failed. Now, let's take a look at the next photo, and I'm going to just fast forward to where that is. As we're looking down on the helicopter as it's oriented this way, you can see that on the left side of the aircraft is where the clean line is, where all those rivets popped. That tail rotor now would have been pushing the aircraft, or the helicopter, in this direction. So if those rivets on this side all popped, this thing would have departed, and it would have made all that jagged metal in front of the man in the black sweater. You can see all the torn up metal as this thing departed from the aircraft. What caused it to fail is still in question. Did it fail all on its own, or was it something that was induced either by the pilot or some other factor? One of the theories is that the rotor blades, the type of rotor blade that they had on it, has caused bumping in these aircraft, and I don't want to get too technical into it because I'm not a helicopter pilot and I don't know. We're going to do another follow-up video. We're going to get a helicopter pilot or two to give us their thoughts on that theory, and then what they see here with those cleanly popped rivets on the left side of the aircraft. That to me is a very telltale sign. Those cleanly popped rivets is probably where this airframe went loose. Now, on the airplanes I've flown over the years, as they get older, they come into maintenance cycles where they will actually x-ray the spars of the aircraft, where the wings attach, where the tail attaches, critical features on the airplane. They'll actually hook up a big x-ray machine and take a look inside the metal to make sure that there's not some hairline cracks. I don't know that this helicopter went through any of those types of inspections or if it was ever x-rayed. If there was a hairline failure or crack in there, that could have caused that pressure. Let's say the pilot's going from 625 feet, he's going to climb back up to 700 feet, and he adds some power and some collective to fly up. As he does, the main rotor is going to pick up speed. There's going to be more torque on the airframe. That tail rotor now is going to pick up speed as well to counteract that movement to the left, and it might have been the final push of pressure on that tail boom that caused those rivets to let loose, and then this whole thing works like a hinge and it rips it open like a can. And if that's what happened, sadly, everybody was doomed on that aircraft because the aircraft just simply came apart in mid-flight. That might be where the banging came from. If those rivets popped, they would make quite a noise. You'd hear a bang, right, from those. And then when the tail came off again, you'd hear another bang when that separated from the aircraft. And of course, you know, as the main rotor comes off of the fuselage of the aircraft, you're going to hear a lot of noise from that as well. So that's kind of my theory on what I think happened. We're going to follow up with some experts on this to see what they think. Let's see how they grade my homework on this one, whether I got it right or not. But I think what happened to this aircraft, according to the preliminary NTSB report, was that it simply just came apart. And that to me is very shocking. Now you know, I'm Captain Steve. Fly safe.